They thought the war would be fought on battlefields, but what unfolded was something far more dangerous. Pressure didn't come from one country or one enemy. It came from every direction at once. Political attacks inside America, global rivals challenging U.S. power, allies hesitating, oil markets shaking, and every decision made inside the White House seemed to create another storm somewhere else. For Donald Trump, this wasn't just a military crisis. It became a fight for political survival, global influence, and personal legacy, all happening at the same time. And the deeper the conflict went, the tighter the pressure became. At first, the administration believed strength would force quick results. Massive statements were made, military warnings intensified. Cameras flashed as officials promised control and dominance. But wars in the modern world don't stay inside borders anymore. The moment conflict escalated, shockwaves spread across global politics, financial markets, diplomatic alliances, and media networks. Suddenly, every move made overseas started creating consequences back home, and Washington itself slowly turned into another battlefield. Inside the United States, political pressure exploded almost immediately. Critics demanded answers, lawmakers questioned intelligence reports, military decisions, and emergency spending. Television panels turned into non-stop arguments. Journalists dug through every statement. Former officials began publicly warning about long-term consequences. The administration faced growing accusations that the situation was spiraling beyond control. And as tensions increased, whispers of investigations started returning to the headlines once again. Then came the deeper political danger, division inside Congress. Some politicians pushed for stronger military action, demanding the U.S. show overwhelming force. Others warned the country was walking into another endless conflict that could drain resources, damage the economy, and divide the public even further. Every speech created new controversy. Every press conference triggered more outrage online. The pressure wasn't only coming from foreign enemies anymore. It was growing from inside America itself. Meanwhile, across the world, China watched carefully. Publicly, China called for peace and stability. Chinese officials criticized escalation and warned about global consequences. On the surface, China appeared calm, diplomatic, and measured. But behind closed doors, analysts believed something else was happening. China understood that every moment of instability weakened American focus. The longer the crisis lasted, the more distracted Washington became. And for Beijing, distraction created opportunity. Economically and diplomatically, China gave Iran breathing room. Trade channels remained active. Strategic relationships stayed intact. International pressure against Tehran never became fully unified because China refused to completely isolate Iran. This created a dangerous balance. One side publicly condemned war, while the other side quietly prevented Iran from becoming cornered. It was a geopolitical chess game playing out behind headlines, and every move complicated America's strategy even more. Then, Iran intensified the psychological battle. It wasn't just missiles and military threats anymore. Iranian media outlets, speeches, interviews, and propaganda campaigns began turning every U.S. action into global spectacle. Videos spread across social media within minutes. Political figures mocked American leadership publicly. Narratives formed portraying the United States as frustrated, reactive, and trapped inside its own decisions. In modern conflict, perception matters almost as much as power, and Iran understood that perfectly. Every response from Washington became another international headline. If the U.S. acted aggressively, critics called it reckless escalation. If it acted cautiously, opponents framed it as weakness. There seemed to be no perfect response.
The administration found itself trapped between appearing too strong or not strong enough, and the world watched every second of it unfold in real time. At the same time, another expectation began collapsing quietly in the background: NATO unity. Traditionally, American leaders expected strong alignment from Western allies during major international crises, but reality turned out to be far more complicated. Some European nations hesitated. Others demanded more discussions before taking major steps. Several governments worried about economic consequences, energy instability, and regional escalation. Public support inside their own countries was fragile. The support existed, but not at the speed Washington wanted. That hesitation mattered, because in moments of crisis, delay itself becomes a message. Analysts began questioning whether the alliance was as united as it appeared on paper. Behind diplomatic language, cracks slowly became visible. Different countries had different priorities, different fears, and different political risks to manage. And that meant America could no longer assume instant alignment from everyone around it.
Then came the economic shockwaves. Oil prices surged rapidly as fears spread across global markets. Investors panicked over possible supply disruptions. Fuel costs climbed. Inflation concerns intensified. Businesses started preparing for instability. Across Europe, Asia, and developing economies, governments faced growing public frustration over rising prices. The war was no longer just a regional conflict. It had become an economic problem affecting millions of ordinary people worldwide. But something surprising happened. Many countries impacted by rising oil costs still refused to fully align behind Washington's expectations. Instead of rushing to support aggressive responses, governments focused on protecting their own economies first. Leaders feared domestic backlash. They feared recession. They feared social unrest caused by inflation and energy shortages. Self-preservation became the global priority. And for the White House, that created another layer of isolation. Back inside America, public opinion became increasingly divided. Some citizens demanded decisive action and stronger military responses. Others questioned why the U.S. kept becoming entangled in overseas conflicts while domestic problems continued growing at home. Protest movements began appearing again. Online debates became toxic and relentless. Political polarization deepened even further. And in the middle of it all, the administration struggled to maintain control over the narrative. The media environment made everything worse. 24-hour news cycles amplified every mistake, every rumor, every disagreement. One leaked report could dominate headlines for days. One unexpected battlefield event could shift political momentum overnight. Social media accelerated fear and outrage faster than governments could respond. In previous wars, leaders controlled information more easily. But now, every second of conflict played out instantly before a global audience. As pressure mounted internationally, questions also emerged about America's long-term strategy. Was there a clear end game? Could escalation trigger something much larger? Would rivals like Russia or China exploit the situation further? Intelligence experts warned that modern conflicts rarely stay contained. One regional war could reshape alliances, markets, and military balances for years. The fear wasn't only about today's fighting, it was about what the world might look like after it ended. And perhaps that became the most dangerous pressure of all: uncertainty. Nobody fully knew where events were heading. Allies were nervous, rivals were calculating, markets were unstable, politicians were divided. Military leaders were cautious. Every choice carried risks, and every delay carried consequences. The administration faced an impossible balancing act while being watched by the entire world. But history shows something important about moments like this.
The greatest pressure on leaders rarely comes from a single enemy. It comes when politics, economics, diplomacy, media, and public opinion all collide at once. That is when strategies break down. That is when alliances get tested. And that is when leadership itself faces its hardest moments. Because in the end, this wasn't just about missiles, alliances, or speeches. It was about survival under pressure from every side imaginable. Rivals pushed from abroad, critics attacked from within, allies hesitated, markets trembled, and the deeper the crisis became, the clearer one reality emerged. Modern power is no longer measured only by military strength. It is measured by how much pressure a nation and its leaders can survive before everything starts to crack. And the world kept watching, waiting to see who would break first.